What's up guys, welcome to the review show where I'm talking about TV shows, starting with Devs. So Devs is a limited TV show created by Alex Garland, the maker of Ex Machina and Annihilation. So I loved Ex Machina. Annihilation I was a little more mixed about. Devs is a near future science fiction show. Now to say too much about the plot would get into spoilers. The whole kind of point of the first half of this limited series is trying to figure out what it's about. And it turns out it's more about themes and ideas than it is an actual story. And that's not a bad thing. I think this is a highly interesting show. A very interesting show with some great ideas, great themes, great messages. Some cool, interesting characters as well. The biggest problem with the show I'm going to get right to right now is that it's really slow. It's very slow, too slow in fact. It's so slow that at times it feels like there's nothing really happening, and at times it feels like it's just meandering. So there are only 8 episodes I think it was. Each episode's about 45 minutes, so it's not the longest show ever, which makes it much more bearable. Basically, you've got this tech company, like a Silicon Valley tech company kind of thing. They've got this dev department where they are coming up with some sort of work that's highly secretive, top secret, no one can talk about it, only certain individuals can go in the building. The government's coming in wanting to have a look at what they're doing. That's kind of going on in the background, it's not really an important thing for the show. One person gets promoted into devs, he then leaks that information and they kill him. This is all in the first episode. This is all the setup of the story, so it's not really a spoilers. The rest of the show is about trying to find out what happened to him and why. And again, I can't really say anything else about this show, but it does get into some really mind-bending, boggling science fiction elements. It really makes you think about things. It really makes you think about life and what you would do if you knew certain things. And yeah, I don't think the execution is always great. I think sometimes the explanation of certain things is a little more convoluted than it needs to be. I think Alex Garland is a highly intelligent, great writer, but he often forgets that a lot of the people who are watching his films and TV shows and so on are idiots. So a lot of stuff that, when it comes to explaining things, it's a very convoluted sometimes, it's going to be over some people's heads. Some people are just going to miss the point altogether, and that's disappointing. But this show is really well shot. It's got great visuals, a great cast. Nick Offerman's great in it. He plays the head of this dev department. Then you've got Alison Pill in there, who's this like cold character who's this cold character. I would say they are the highlights of the show. The main characters are looking for justice. I think you've got the character Zach Grenier, who's really playing a different kind of role for him. Usually he plays like lawyers or priests or something. He plays much more like smaller side character roles, but here he's got a much more action orientated role, and it's really interesting. It shows just how much range he's got and how good of an actor he is. But yeah, the cast across the board is great. It's well directed, it's well shot, it looks good, great ideas, well written. I just wish it wasn't so slow. Modern Family Season 11. So this is the final season of Modern Family. If you would ask me about the first 6 seasons, I would have said this is one of the greatest comedies ever made. Then it gradually kind of got worse and worse. I don't think it ever got so bad that it was flat out bad. But there was a moment somewhere between season 6 and season 10 where I was like, ooh, this is a very different show than what it used to be. It doesn't have the quality behind it anymore. Season 7 I think is a step, season 11 I believe is a step up from some of the worst seasons of this show. And it's also a demonstration of that this show has gone on too long. They are repeating jokes, they are repeating certain elements, certain character storylines. It doesn't always feel like they've got a plan for what's going to happen to this show and these characters. By the final episode of this season, all the characters do get some sort of closure. You do get an idea of what's going to happen to them, where their fate is, and it's great to see these characters get the closure that they deserve, because these characters are the heart of this show. They are very lovable, very likable, very relatable. It's just a shame that along the way, because of how long the show's gone on, because it has had like 20 plus episodes per season, they have at times had to do some pretty silly things with the characters. They have had to explore some pretty silly ideas with the characters. This one I think does a good job of grounding them a bit more and making them a much more relatable than what they have been in some of the recent seasons. But great cast, great acting. I would say this season doesn't have like standout episodes from like the first few seasons. I don't think there's anything in this that is absolutely brilliant or great even, but I don't think there's anything in this season that's just bad. So that's a good thing. This season is also shorter than the other ones. It's actually only got like 15 episodes or something like that. Why? I don't know. Not complaining too much. One of the problems though with this season is that in recent years certain characters have been getting utilised less and less. The big one I would say is Luke. In the first few seasons, Luke was one of the funniest things about the show, Luke being the youngest of the children. They had a very clear idea of what he was and who he was. Then as he got older, they had to change what he was and who he was because it no longer worked in the same way. And along that way, they've kind of put him to the side a bit. This season they kind of pull that back and make him a bit more like he was in the first few seasons. But even then, he is only appearing here and there. In fact, this is something you can say about a lot of the kids. As the shows progressed, the shows became much more about the adults and less about the kids. And that's kind of disappointing. Because this is a big ensemble piece. They're all considered main characters and yet the adults have been getting all the attention. So it's disappointing that way on. It's also a little disappointing that when the kids do get featured in the storylines, their storylines aren't always that unique or interesting. In fact, their storylines are often the silliest of the storylines. But like I said, season 11, it is the final season. There's a lot of heart and emotion in this. They do a good job of giving everyone some closure and finality, and I think the show does end on a good note. And yeah, I do recommend this. If you've gone off Modern Family, you could probably come back and watch this final season. Hell, you can probably just come back and watch the final 2 or 3 episodes or whatever and get a great closure and find out what happened to everyone. Final show I'm talking about today is Dave Season 1. So Dave Season 1, this is a fictionalized version of Lil Dicky. So Lil Dicky is a rapper and he's kind of an online sensation, I suppose you could say. This show fictionalizes his life and his career, and it's a comedy. It's really quite good. Sometimes I think it's smarter than it thinks it is, sometimes I think it's not as smart as it thinks it is. Because at the end of the day, Lil Dicky is a rapper who basically does songs and music videos about his dick. And it's very immature, some of the content that he's doing, but he thinks he's being smarter than he is. He thinks that he's got some sort of nuance. Some people get it, some people don't. I think this show does a really good job at explaining his artistry, his approach to it, and that, hey, just because he's talking about a certain subject matter doesn't mean that he's any less than another rapper or another musician. It's just he's taking it in a different direction. So I think it does a good job of exploring that. It's also does a good job of not putting too much focus on Lil Dicky, because while he is the main character, it does a good job of bringing in some of the supporting characters and showcasing them. So there's a great moment where one of his friends is revealed has bipolar disorder. That's a great episode. In fact, a lot of these episodes, it seems to change the focus from Lil Dicky to one of his friends, and Lil Dicky's kind of just going between them all at times. It should also be noted that Lil Dicky, Dave, is a co-creator of the show. He's involved in the writing and the making of the show. So one of the things that is impressive is that he has managed to take a back seat when it's appropriate to allow the other characters to get their moments. That's really quite good. I think the actor playing his girlfriend is great. I've not really seen her in anything else before, but she's very likable, very quirky, very unique. I like her quite a bit. In fact, pretty much all of the side characters I like quite a bit. It's really well acted, really well written. They all feel like real, believable individuals. It's very funny at times. It also serves up some drama. There's some shocking moments in there as well, both dramatic and funny wise. I think this is really quite an interesting show. I don't think it's a great show, but I think it could get there. There's a moment in the final episode without going into spoilers, the first half of like the final episode is presented as like a music video. And it's really cool, really inventive, really interesting. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. And it's also really funny. So yeah, where I think this show might suffer is that if you're not a fan of Lil Dicky, if you're not a fan of Dave, you might be less interested in it. Now, that being said, I'm not a fan of Lil Dicky, I'm not a fan of Dave. I didn't really know much about him. I'd heard his name before and knew what he'd done, but beyond that I couldn't have told you any of his songs or anything. I still enjoyed the show, I still think it's a good show. If you've got no connection to rap or him as an individual or anything, if you hate rap music, if it's not your cup of tea, you might still find some enjoyment from just the storytelling perspective and some of the comedic moments, but a lot of the stuff's going to be lost on you. There are some famous faces who pop up here and there, so if you don't have any connection to rap music or rap industry or whatever, a lot of this is going to be lost on you, which is a bit disappointing. So this is also a very adult show. There's a lot of talk about sexual content, there's a lot of bad language, there's a lot of really out there comedy. There's one episode where something just disgusting happens. I'm not going to say what it is, but something happens and it's hilarious and shocking and disgusting all at once. So this show is not going to be for everyone, but I do think it's well made. I do like it a lot. I do think it's very funny at times, and I do kind of recommend it. And that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'm Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. Most importantly though, subscribe to my channel to get more content like this. Until next time though, thanks for watching.